before the bells ring and the roosters call, before the merchants lift their canvas awnings and the bread scents begin to drift through stone-paved alleys. The medieval town still sleeps in a hush of hay and frost. Elspeth wakes, not with a jolt, nor a rush, but with the slow rise of someone used to the rhythm of the sun. She lies beneath wool and linen, warmed by the breath of a small fire still smouldering in the hearth. Her home is a narrow timber-framed space, with thick walls that lean inward as if they, too, are still drowsy. She listens. The wind curls under the eaves. The coals crackle softly. A distant donkey brays, and from far away perhaps the bakery stone oven comes a muffled thump. The town is stirring. Elspeth slips from her bed. Her bare feet touch the cold wooden floor, and she moves through the morning shadows with practiced ease. She wraps herself in a shawl, thick and smelling faintly of dried lavender and wood smoke, then lights a small oil lamp. The flame flickers, golden and hesitant, like the dawn itself. Today is market day, and she will go not to buy, but to walk, to carry her basket woven from reeds and patience, to pause by the spice cellar, to smell the air, to touch wool dyed with crushed berries. She does not need much, but she needs the walk. Outside, the cobbled street glistens from last night's rain. Puddles reflect the orange glow of lanterns hung at shop doors. The town is older than memory, older than Elspeth's grandmother's songs. Its bones are stone, and its breath is the echo of bells from the abbey on the hill. The market is not open yet, but she walks through the space where it will be. Wooden carts stand like sleeping beasts, their wheels muddy, their sides stacked with barrels and sacks. Chickens, tethered in wicker cages, shift restlessly. A dog trots across the square and disappears behind a cart of onions. Everything smells of earth and waiting. She walks with a slow grey Elspeth, who once ran through these same streets. As a child, who once sang songs to the geese near the river, who once danced at midsummer in a crown of wheat. Now she walks and watches. She pauses at the fabric merchant's corner. Bolts of cloth, dyed in shades of rust, ivy and sky, lean against the stall wall. She runs her fingers over one pale blue linen. It feels like morning wind. She wonders what it would become in the hands of a seamstress. A gown for a bride, a tunic for a wandering bard. She doesn't need it, but she imagines. The bell rings once, then twice. The market has begun. Voices stir the square like birds disturbed from a tree. A baby cries. A smith laughs. Boots strike the stones. Someone drops a crate, and apples tumble, rolling like golden moons across the earth. And still, Elspeth walks. A man with a basket of herbs stops her and presses a sprig of rosemary into her hand. For memory, he says, and she nods. She tucks it into her sleeve. A baker's boy offers her a heel of bread, still warm, soft as clouds, crusted with flour. She tears it gently, eating it slowly as she turns down a side alley lined with candles and honeycombs. The market blooms. It does not explode with colour, it unfurls, like a tapestry unrolled across time. Brass bells hang from ribbons. Eels writhe. In buckets, feathers drift from caged fowl. A woman sells charms carved from bone. A man offers tales, 1 silver coin for a story, and the smell of the smell. Wood smoke, spice, wet wool, yeast, old leather, dried figs, fresh mint. Elspeth walks through it all like one drifting through a memory. She does not. By dot she listens, smiles, nods. There's an old woman hunched beside a crate of dyed yarns. The colours are rich indigo, blood red, moss green, and Elspeth asks her what plants she uses. Woad, the old woman replies, pointing with a crooked finger, and madder root. This one, she holds up a golden thread, is onion. Skin, Elspeth holds it up to the sun. It glows like a candle's heart. She thanks the woman and moves on. Two boys play with carved wooden swords near a cheese stall. A lute player sings a tune with no words, just long vowels and notes like the curve of a feather falling. A goat breaks free and chases a girl in a violet smock, much to the laughter of the watching crowd, and above it all, the bell rings again. Noon, the light is changed now, more golden, the shadows shorter, the crowd thicker, voices louder, but Elspeth slows. She steps into a narrow lane lined with ivy. It leads to the chapel garden, where herbs grow wild and the bees hum their slow hymns. She sits on a stone bench, takes the rosemary from her sleeve, and presses it between her palms. The scent Ristrup, green, earthy dot. She closes her eyes. The market continues without her now, but in her mind it lingers. The colours, the textures, the warmth of bread, the soft eyes of the candle seller, the sparkle of sun on rain-washed cobbles. She is not lonely, she is filled. Tomorrow she may return, or she may not. But today she walked among voices, among lives, among the thousand silent wonders of a world quietly alive. And that, for her, was enough. Relaxation the next morning. Mist clings low to the earth like a memory not yet let go. Elspeth awakens once more before the town fully breathes. The coals in the hearth have burned down to ash, but she stirs the embers with a curved iron rod, coaxing a flicker into flame. She wraps herself in her shawl and places her reed-woven basket near the door, as if to remind herself, today is not a day of walking, but of gathering. There are small things to fetch, not necessities, not burdens, but comforts. Threads of saffron, a wedge of good cheese, a few apples that have kept their sweetness past the first frost. The kind of things a soul collects quietly. When she steps out, the street glimmers with dew. Shutters creak open above her. A young girl leans out, stretching her arms to the sky. Somewhere, someone sweeps a doorway. Someone else pours water from a jug into a wooden trough, and it trickles like a lullaby. The town is waking. Elspeth walks the path she knows well, down past the old stone wall mottled with moss, across the bridge where the water flows soft and slow, always to the sea but never in a hurry. At the edge of the market square she pauses not to look for goods, but to feel the day, and it is a soft one. Clouds drift like worn linen. The sun is hidden but near, as if playing behind a curtain. The air smells of wet wood and warm dough. Her first stop is the herb stall. The apothecary's daughter, no older than 12, mans it today. She is small, pale, and sharped, with hands stained green from grinding mint and thyme. Rose petals. Elspeth asks gently. The girl nods. From yesterday's bloom. I dried them with clove and orange rind. She hands Elspeth a small satchel tied with a braid of twine. Elspeth inhales its scent and smiles, placing it into her basket as though it were a jewel. Next comes the cheese. A man from the dairy farm wheels his cart into the square just as she approaches. His boots are caked in mud, and his beard is full of crumbs from a meal hastily eaten. Only the sharpest for you, Elspeth, he says, offering her a sliver cut from the wheel with a copper blade. She tastes it. It stings pleasantly. Bold, alive. Yes, she says, nodding. Just that piece. She wraps it in waxed cloth and tucks it away, between the petals and a folded scrap of embroidered linen she found earlier at a forgotten corner stall. The linen had no price. The vendor, an old woman with a bent back and no teeth, had simply said, "Take it. It remembers better days." And so Elspeth had taken it because memories have weight, and some weights are worth carrying. In the center of the market square, musicians gather, 2 fiddlers and a man with a hollow drum. They begin to play a tune that sounds like leaves, falling in rhythm, like footsteps in a hallway long gone. People pause to listen. Elspeth does too. She doesn't dance, she hasn't for years, but her foot taps gently, and her shoulders sway just enough for the music to feel heard. At a nearby stall, a boy no taller than the bench he sits on sells beeswax figures, animals, saints, miniature loaves of bread, and tiny hearts. They glow gold in the grey light. She chooses a little fox. "He looks like he has secrets," she says. The boy grins. He does. Into the basket the fox goes, tucked beside a spool of indigo thread and a cluster of dried figs given to her by a silent monk near the abbey steps. And still the square grows louder. More voices, more laughter, more clatter of pots and clink of coins. But Elspeth walks quietly through it all, collecting not the things that shout, but the ones that whisper. A spoon carved from olive wood, a candle that smells like pine, a scrap of parchment, with a poem written in a shaky hand. Let the bread rise, let the water sing, let silence fall like feathers on wing. She does not know the poet. She does not need to. The words find her, and that is enough. Her basket, now full, is not heavy. It carries no meat, no sacks of flour, no burdens for winter, only softness, only comfort. And so she walks once more down the alley of ivy, toward the garden behind the chapel. The bees are slower today, the air cool on her cheeks. She sits on the bench once more, lays her basket beside her, and pulls from it the poem. She reads it aloud to no one, but the wind listens, the stone listens, and maybe, just maybe, the memories that linger in this town, in the cracks of its walls and the loops of its alleyways, they listen to, because in this place nothing is truly gone, not stories, not scents, not footsteps. Elspeth closes her eyes. The market behind her continues, humming and thrumming with life. The market behind her continues, humming and thrumming with life, and in her quiet corner she smiles, not for what she has gathered, but for what she has remembered. The world is made of small things, and today her basket is full of them. The following day arrives veiled in silver-grey mist, the kind that makes rooftops blur and cobbles shine as if washed clean by dreams. There's a hush to the world, as if the town itself has paused to listen to its own memory. Elspeth wraps herself in her thickest wool cloak, the one her mother spun decades ago from sheep that once roamed the hills behind the abbey. Its texture is worn but loyal, holding the warmth of many winters. Today's walk to the market isn't for food or fragrance. It is for threads, textures, warmth. She seeks not the necessity of garments, but the comfort of them as she steps into the open air. The church bell rings just once, a low, ancient chime, a sound that rolls gently through the fog, folding over roofs and winding through lanes like a lullaby for the town. Elspeth walks slowly, past shutters half opened, where cats perch like silent guardians. Past the cooper's workshop, where the scent of damp oak and iron filings floats in waves. Past the faded mural on the apothecary's wall, barely visible now, depicting saints with gentle eyes and hands outstretched in peace. She reaches the weaver's stall. Today, it is draped with skeins of dyed wool in deep jewel tones, lapis blue, madder red, goldenrod yellow. The woman tending the stall nods softly to Elspeth, no need for words between them. Elspeth runs her fingers over the yarn. Each thread holds a story, the colour of crushed berries, the feel of spring rain, the patience of quiet hands spinning at night by firelight. She selects a small bundle of violet wool, the shade of twilight when lamps first flicker in windows. Good for mending. Or dreams, the weaver says. Elspeth pays in coin and thanks, and continues on. At the next stall, a blacksmith's wife lays out hand-forged trinkets, delicate brooches, rough-hewn keys, and tiny animal charms. Elspeth finds a bell the size of a thimble, its tone high and clear. For a window, the woman explains, to keep away bad spirits or call in good ones. Elspeth tucks it into her basket, thinking of wind-stirred lullabies and windows that breathe as the market thickens with footfalls and voices. Elspeth edges toward a quieter aisle, one lined with vendors who sell not necessities, but forgotten things, chipped crockery, yellowed pages of scripture, lacework no longer claimed. There, an old man offers her a wooden button shaped like a leaf. For luck, he croaks, though whether it's truth or habit, no one knows. She accepts it. A group of children plays nearby, weaving between stalls with arms outstretched like birds. One bumps into her and gasps an apology, cheeks flushed. Elspeth just smiles and offers him the tiny bell. Keep it, she says. For music. The boy grins, rings it once, and runs off laughing. She stops near a cloth merchant, next bolts of fabric arranged in cascading colour. She sees a length of faded green linen, frayed at the edges but still soft. The merchant sees her eye linger. It's been waiting for you, she says, with a wink. Elspeth laughs quietly and runs her hand along it once more before nodding. The linen is added to her bundle of wool and bell-less silence as she walks. Her basket gathers weight again, not the weight of burden, but of meaning, of small comforts, of pieces of other lives now carried in her arms. A shoemaker waves her over and gifts her a leather strap braided with tin charms. For your wrist, he says, to remember all the places your feet have taken you. She accepts it, slips it on, and feels if only faintly like the wind itself might recognize her dot. By noon, the market thins. The mist begins to rise, revealing sharper edges of buildings and brighter glints of sky. The world starts to shimmer in that rare midday way where clouds seem full of memory and the air hums softly. Elspeth makes her way toward the far edge of the market, where the potter's stall stands with shelves of bowls, cups, and strange little figurines no one quite understands. The potter himself, a man of few words, simply nods to her and offers a small dish with a spiral etched at its center. For your thread, he says. Elspeth smiles and adds it to the rest, her arms now full of textures and tones, of materials meant to mend or remind. She doesn't go straight home. Instead, she detours along the edge of the river, where geese patrol the banks and the reeds sway like dancers. She watches the water glide by, a mirror of the sky, and pulls the violet yarn from her basket. She holds it up and watches the wind catch the tail of it. In that moment, she remembers her grandmother's voice, singing softly as her fingers worked through wool, making warm things for cold days. She remembers how the yarn passed through generations, how weaving wasn't just a craft but a conversation with time. She ties the yarn to a low-hanging branch, lets it flutter like a flag for something forgotten, and then, slowly, she walks back, her basket full, her spirit quieter. In her cottage, later, as twilight softens the sky, Elspeth places the leaf-shaped button on the windowsill. It glows briefly in the amber light anew, but lovely, the little linen scrap she tucks into her chest of sewing things, the thread dish she fills, the leather bracelet she keeps on, and the memories, they stay like soft wool against skin, like a bell in a child's hand, like a whispered thank you long after the market is closed. Dawn tiptoes into the town with a kiss of lavender lights, brushing rooftops and thatched eaves with the colour of gentle beginnings. Elspeth wakes to the quiet sound of doves cooing. Above the hearth, a sound as familiar as breath. She opens the wooden shutters, letting in the cool hush of morning. Mist still clings to the ground, curling around stones and fence posts like an old friend reluctant to leave. Today, she is going to the alley behind the church, where herbs grow not in gardens, but from cracks in walls and between stones, where old women sell bundles wrapped in linen and waxed string, where stories smell of rosemary and thyme. She gathers her basket and wraps herself in a shawl that still holds the scent of last autumn's lavender. On her way, she walks past the baker's stall. Though she has no need for bread today, the warmth of it greets her like an embrace. The baker nods at her with flour on his cheek. He's set out little honey cakes, golden and soft, meant for children, but Elspeth buys one anyway. She tucks it into her sleeve for later. A small sweetness. Past the baker is the alley. It's narrow, barely wide enough for a cart, but it is alive. Plants spill over windowsills. Crates of dried sage and mint rest on wooden tables. There are small woven wreaths of marjoram hanging, like charms. The first woman she meets is Agnes, who's as stooped as a question mark and smells of nettle tea. "Throat bothering you again?" Agnes asks, as if Elspeth had already spoken. Elspeth laughs. "No, but my sleep has wandered." Agnes hands her a pouch. Inside, a mix of chamomile, valerian, and crushed rose petals. "Steep it before the stars rise." "Let your thoughts float," Agnes whispers. Elspeth places the bundle gently in her basket, as though it were a sleeping bird. Further down the alley, a tall man with wind-chapped hands displays jars of infused oils, amber and green and gold. Each jar is corked and sealed with wax, pressed with small stamps. A tree, a star, a wave. He holds out a jar without asking. "This one is for memory." Elspeth sniffs it. Pine, rosemary, and something faintly citrus. It smells like her mother's garden, years gone. "I'll take it," she says softly. As she walks deeper into the alley, the smells change, from the sweetness of fennel to the bite of garlic drying on strings. There's a stall selling bundles of mugwort and yarrow tied in red twine. Another selling sachets to place in linen drawers, herbs that ward off moths and bad dreams alike. She sees a child sitting cross-legged behind a table, counting lavender buds one by one into tiny clay bowls. The girl looks up and smiles, her front tooth missing. "Want to smell my favourite?" she asks, holding up a bowl. Elspeth leans in. It's lemon bomb bright, clean, like spring wind in early sun. "Beautiful," Elspeth whispers. She buys a bowl. Not because she needs it, but because the girl's joy fills the air like music. in a shadowed corner near the end of the alley, Elspeth finds a set of hand-stitched sachets made of old linen, embroidered with stars. Each holds a different blend, some for courage, some for dreams, one labeled for letting go. She chooses that one. The woman at the stall nods, but says nothing. Elspeth doesn't need words, either as she steps out of the alley and back into the wide street of the market. The sun has risen high enough to make the mist glow. The warmth feels earned, like a blessing. She stops near the fountain, sets down her basket, and unpacks the little bowl of lemon balm. Sitting on the low stone edge, she rubs a pinch between her fingers and breathes in deeply around her. The town goes about its gentle business. A boy leads a goat by a rope. A woman repairs a tear in her apron with patient fingers. A priest sweeps dust from the chapel steps, humming a hymn older than stone. Elspeth closes her eyes. Her breath is slower now. The market, the herbs, the child's toothless grin, Agnes's quiet knowing, it all swirls gently in her chest like smoke from a hearth. She reaches into her basket, unwraps the honey cake, and breaks off a piece it tastes of saffron and sunlight. Later, at home, she places the letting go sachet beside her bed. She holds the memory oil a moment longer before setting it near the window, where light will warm the glass, and before sleep takes her that evening, she hears again the voice of Agnes, like a rustle of leaves. Let your thoughts float. And so they do. The morning sun has begun to slant at a warmer angle, spilling honey-coloured light over the cobbles of the town square. The market, now gently humming with life, draws Elspeth onward, this time toward the Weaver's Lane, where colours dance and threads whisper ancient stories. She walks slowly, her basket still scented with herbs from the day before. Today, her fingers crave the touch of fabric of linen softened by washings, of wool dyed in colours drawn from flowers, berries, and bark. The Weaver's Corner is not far. It begins where the main road curves into a shaded nook, where lines of fabric flutter like sails on a sleepy ship. The wind carries the faint smell of lanolin and old wood. A loom clicks steadily nearby, its rhythm like a heart beating for centuries. An old man with a long braid works it, his fingers patient and skilled. Back again, Elspeth, he asks, not looking up. Only to look, she replies, though both know that's never true. She runs her hand along the edge of a hanging tapestry. The threads shimmer in the soft light indigo and sage, saffron and rose. It shows a stag in a twilight forest, its antlers catching stars. Woven from midnight hours, the weaver says, eyes twinkling, next to the tapestry. There are rolls of cloth stacked neatly in dyed linen, simple but honest. One length is embroidered with tiny vines of ivy along its hem. Elspeth lifts it gently. The fabric folds like memory in her hands. A woman nearby tends a pot of dye that steams in hues of crushed marigold. She lifts a wet scarf from the bath with wooden tongs, letting the gold drip in rivulets. Would you like to try? The dyer asks softly. Elspeth hesitates, then steps closer. The woman hands her a skein of wool soaked in water and a pair of worn gloves. The dye is warm and fragrant, floral, earthy, alive. She lowers the wool into the dye pot slowly, watching the colour bloom. It drinks in the yellow like thirst meeting rain when she lifts it again. The strand glows like captured sun. She smiles. The dyer nods. That colour will carry warmth, even in winter. At a small wooden bench, 2 children are carding wool. Their sleeves are rolled up and their faces smudged with flecks of lint. One hums as he works, a lullaby with no beginning or end. Elspeth watches them a while, lost in the rhythm. Further down the lane, a woman arranges shawls in careful layers, like petals of a flower. Each is different. One is woven of dusky blue and edged with silver thread. Another is the pale green of new leaves. She touches a russet one with a stitched sun near the shoulder. For courage, the woman says. Elspeth tries it on. The wool is soft, with a whisper of spice from the herbs tucked into the folds. It settles around her shoulders like something familiar. She trades a small jar of rosehip preserves and a pair of beeswax candles for the shawl. No coins change hands only. Things made, gathered, gifted. Near the end of the lane, an elderly woman sits spinning flax. Her spindle moves with graceful precision. She hums a tune older than the buildings around her. A song passed from mother to daughter for generations. Elspeth kneels beside her. "Will you teach me?" she asks. The spinner smiles and hands her a second spindle. "Only if you're patient." Together they spin. The flax becomes thread between Elspeth's fingers, and at first, but slowly steadier. She feels the rhythm settle into her bones. Later, she wraps the thread around a small stick and tucks it into her basket. "It's not perfect," she says. "No, dear," the spinner replies, "it's yours." As Elspeth walks back through the weaver's lane, her new shawl clutched close, she hears the distant echo of the loom's song. The children's laughter, the quiet chant of thread through fingers. Back home, she places the skein of golden wool in a drawer with lavender and moth leaf. The courage shawl hangs by the door, waiting for the next journey. That night, she dreams of a stag in a twilight forest, stars caught in its antlers, walking. Beside her, through trees that whisper secrets in threads. Asterisk the potter's alley. The morning deepens into midday, and with it, the hum of the town's heart grows richer. Elspeth's feet carry her toward a narrow lane near the edge of the square, known to locals as the potter's alley. It smells faintly of earth, ash, and sun-baked clay. The walls here are close and warm, their stone surfaces rough with moss and old ivy. Overhead, drying herbs hang beside glazed cups, gently swaying in the breeze like wind chimes without sound. A dog sleeps beneath a worn cart, its paws twitch in a quiet dream. Elspeth moves slowly, pausing by a stall lined with bowls of every shape and shade. Some are plain and perfect, the color of river stones. Others are painted with curling vines, birds mid-flight, moons and stars. She lifts a small cup with a tiny blue rabbit painted at its base. "For tea," says the potter, a woman with arms strong from the wheel. "Or secrets," Elspeth smiles. "Secrets need smaller cups." A kill stands nearby, its mouth open like a great cave. A boy tends it, his eyes focused on the slow dance of flames within. The orange light plays on his cheeks like a story being told without words. On a long table, freshly thrown pots rest beneath linen cloths. Their shapes are not yet fixed, still soft, still listening. A girl carves a gentle spiral into the rim of a pitcher, her fingers dusty and calm. Elspeth walks past shelves of jars labelled in careful script. Lavender honey, smoked salt, clove infusion, and moon water. Each vessel is glazed in midnight blues and forest greens, with lids shaped like acorns or suns. One jar catches her eye, a soft cream pot with little thumbprints along its base. A heart is scratched faintly onto its side. "That one keeps butter cool, even in August," says the potter. "Magic, maybe." A laugh floats from deeper in the alley, where a woman is demonstrating the wheel. Clay spins fast beneath her hands, Rising into a vase with a long, swan-like neck, Elspeth watches, mesmerized. She steps forward as the woman offers a turn. "Center it first," she says. Elspeth places her hands around a lump of wet clay. It's cold, yieldingly. The wheel begins to spin. Her hands are clumsy, and the shape wobbles. But slowly, with a breath and a pause, it resues a small bowl. Imperfect and beautiful. The potter grins. It remembers your touch. She sets it aside, marking it with a soft cloth and Elspeth's name. Next, Elspeth visits the corner where broken pots are arranged, not for discard, but for beauty. A mosaic emerges, their shards of failed cups turned into a great image of a tree, its roots curling like smoke. Nothing truly breaks. Someone murmurs behind her. She picks up a sliver, shaped like a crescent moon, and tucks it into her satchel. Later, a boy offers her a clay-fluted song, thin and sweet like spring wind through reeds. She plays a single note, and a dove in the rafters responds with a coo. Coins are rarely exchanged in this lane. Elspeth trades a packet of dried rose petals and a braid of sweetgrass for her treasures. She walks away with the flute in her belt, the thumbprint butter jar nestled in linen, and the promise of her bowl waiting to be fired. The sun casts long shadows as she leaves the potter's alley. She glances back once, seeing the fire still glowing and the potters working gently, as if shaping time itself. That night, Elspeth places the rabbit cup on her windowsill. She fills it with rainwater caught in the morning. She places the moon-shaped shard beside it, and the clay flute hums beside her pillow. And as sleep finds her, she dreams of hands shaping stars from spinning clay, of vessels carrying laughter, of fire that doesn't burn but remembers. Past the potter's alley and beyond the herbal stalls, where leaves rustle like whispered lullabies, Elspeth drifts toward the shadow of an arched gate carved into the stone of the old abbey wall. Beneath this gentle arch, where ivy trails like ancient script and pigeons nest in quiet rows, the scribes have laid out their cloths and scrolls. The air here is different, quieter still, like the moment before a candle flickers into light. Low tables hold parchments, quills, and pots of ink so dark they shine violet in the sun. Illuminated letters glow on stretched vellum, their gold leaf catching light like dewdrops. Elspeth kneels beside a scroll painted with the figure of a lion made of flowers. Bestiary, the scribe murmurs, for a girl who dreamed of becoming one. Another scribe, older, with fingers stained from oak gall ink, writes not words but shapes maps of cities that no longer exist. Towers of forgotten empires curl across the parchment like memory. "Where is this?" Elspeth asks. "In the mind," he says, "and sometimes in dreams." Nearby, a young apprentice carves letters into soft bark with a sharpened bone. The alphabet grows like a vine. She dips her fingers in blue powder and presses them gently onto linen, a small handprint framed by spirals. Elspeth is offered a sheet of pressed parchment and a feather quill. She hesitates, then writes a single word, quiet. The scribe nods solemnly. A rare word, a powerful one. Under another arch, a woman with hair like braided ink reads aloud from a tale written a century ago, her voice soft as wool, her accent long faded from the tongues of the living. Children gather near her feet, listening not with minds, but with dreams. Elspeth listens to, eyes closed. She pictures towers made of paper, stairs that rise only when named, and a dragon that sleeps in the pages of a prayer book. A table farther down holds sealed letters addressed to the future, and to the child I was, Wax seals are soft in the heat. Elspeth gently picks one up, unsure if she is meant to open it or carry it forward. A tiny boy with ink-dusted cheeks shows her a book with no words, only shapes that shift when tilted to the sun. "This one listens to your breath," he whispers. Elspeth watches as the book glows faintly in her hands. The pages warm and whispering dot above them. A pigeon coos, then flutters down beside the scrolls. Around its ankle is a tiny silver ring. The older scribe lifts it gently, removes a roll of paper, and reads it silently. She says the moon is full over the sea. He murmurs Elspeth, doesn't ask who she is. A breeze rustles the pages. One scroll tumbles gently toward her, unrolling across the ground. It holds a single poem. The ink remembers what the lips forget. The page keeps what the wind lets go. She copies it into her satchel journal, sealing it with a pressed flower from her morning walk as she prepares to leave. The scribes offer her a small jar of night ink, black as sleep and scented faintly of lilac, for dreams you wish to keep. They say she takes it with 2 hands, bowing gently, leaving the arch. The light feels warmer, the colors richer, as if the very world has been written anew. Elspeth walks slowly, the jar safe in her pouch. The word quiet still fresh on her fingertips, and behind her, beneath the fading arch, the scribes continue writing the stories no one remembers yet somehow. Everyone knows the scent of crushed mint and lavender draws Elspeth to the sun-dappled edge of the market, where the cobblestones soften into earth and moss. Here, behind a crumbling wall with wild roses tumbling over its edge, lies the weaver's gardener, hidden pocket of colour and quiet humming. Not quite a stall and not quite a workshop. The garden belongs to an old woman everyone calls Mistress Thimble. Though her real name has long since faded from use, Elspeth steps through the low wooden gate, ducking beneath a string of drying blossoms. Spools of thread dangle from the trees like fruit, indigo, saffron, moss green, and dusk purple. They sway gently in the breeze, whispering to one another in a language only the wind understands. Mistress Thimble is seated cross-legged on a woven mat, her hands moving without hurry, feeding thread into a loom shaped like a crescent moon. Her silver hair is bound with ribbons faded by time, and her eyes hold the colour of soft rain. "Sit, if you like," she says without looking up. "Your feet sound like someone who remembers lullabies." Elspeth lowers herself onto a cushion, shaped like a leaf, watching the loom with quiet awe. The threads glide under and over, painting patterns that seem to change depending on the angle. A bird mid-flight, a wave folding gently, a face smiling through mist. A nearby basket overflows, with cloths embroidered with stories not words, but entire memories sewn into linen. A scarf that feels like the first day of spring. A shawl that hums with the sound of a long-lost lullaby. Mistress Thimble reaches into the basket and pulls out a thread spun with twilight blue and gold specks. "This one," she murmurs, "was spun from a dream I had of the stars falling into a lake." She offers the thread to Elspeth the moment she touches it. A warmth curls in her chest, like the hush of bedtime when you were small and safe and the fire still glowed low. Around them, butterflies drift lazily among the herbs. A cat with one green eye and one gold eye curls beside the loom, its tail twitching to the rhythm of the weft. A small girl with missing teeth is learning to spin nearby, her spindle bobbing like a tiny dancer. I'm making thread for a moon pocket. She tells Elspeth to keep my dreams in when I'm awake. Mistress Thimble chuckles. She's wiser than most kings. At the center of the garden stands a tree whose bark has been stitched with names, teeny, embroidered letters climbing the trunk like ivy. Elspeth finds her fingers brushing the lowest branch, where someone has stitched simply, "Hope, everyone." Adds a word eventually, Mistress Thimble says, when they know what they need. Elspeth thinks for a moment, then chooses a small pearl-grey thread. Carefully, quietly, she stitches the word softness just beneath the leaves. Mistress. Thimble ties a scrap of cloth around Elspeth's wrist before she leaves, woven with blush pink and honey gold. To remind you that not all strength shouts, she says. Some of it hums. As Elspeth steps back into the bustle of the market, the cloth catches the sun, and she smiles. For though the world is noisy and the stones beneath her feet are uneven, the memory of the weaver's garden hums in her bones a lullaby stitched from colour, silence, and care. At the far end of the winding market, where the crowds grow quiet and the shadow of the old bell tower spills long across the cobbled square, Elspeth finds a stall not marked by signs, but by scent. It's an invisible thread in the air notes of rosewood, myrrh, crushed juniper, honeycomb, and something softer, like rain-soaked parchment. The air itself seems heavier, hushed, as if every breath is a whisper from another time. This is the domain of Anselm, the Perfumer. His table is no ordinary stall. It's a curved crescent of aged oak, carved with flowers and moons and strange, sleepy eyes. Tiny glass vials sit in rows, each filled with liquid of different hues, deep sapphire, palest amber, soft green like the inside of a seashell. He wears no apron, only a robe the colour of fog, and his hair falls in silver waves to his shoulders. His voice, when he greets Elspeth, is slow as incense curling through a chapel. No coin today, he says, as if speaking to a dream, only memories. Elspeth blinks. Memories. He gestures to the vials. Each of these is a story, and stories are remembered through scent more than sound. He hands her a small bottle shaped like a tear. Try this. Elspeth uncorks it. The scent fills her sudden warmth, the feel of her mother's wool cloak, apples warming near a hearth. The breath of snow beyond the window. She nearly gasps. That was Winter's Eve when I was 7. Anselm only nods, as if he expected her to know. A girl with wind-chapped cheeks offers him a pressed flower and in return receives a vial that smells of wildflowers, lost fields, and the breeze that hums through birch trees. She cradles it like a candle. Anselm turns to Elspeth. What are you seeking? I don't know, she admits. He doesn't ask again. Instead, he dips a slender wand into a dark green flask and brushes the scent onto the air before her. Moss, salt, warm leather, almond blossoms, rain on stone, the hush before thunder, and suddenly she remembers something that was never hers, walked by the sea in another lifetime, barefoot, hand in hand with someone whose name is made of wind. Anselm smiles faintly. That one's called returning. Before she can ask how he knew, he gestures to a collection of small wax-sealed envelopes. You may take one, he says. Each contains a sleeping perfume. One drop upon your pillow, and your dreams will tell you what you've forgotten. Elspeth chooses one with a pale ribbon tied around it. Sleep deeply, Anselm says, and remember that not every path is walked with feet. As she turns to leave, the bell in the tower above begins to toll. Slow and resonant, it carries. Across the stones and into the bones, Elspeth doesn't look back, but in her palm the vial warms slightly as though it, too, remembers her. As twilight nears, Elspeth follows a quieter path beyond the lantern-lit bustle and past the echo of clanging pans and laughter. Here, where green ivy creeps along crumbling stone walls and the earth smells of loam and bark, a small woven awning shades the stall of the basket weaver. She is an old woman with hands like tree roots, strong, gnarled, and steady. Her shawl is patterned in the muted colours of dried leaves, and her seat is nothing more than a worn stool beneath a canopy of dried reeds and hanging moss. She hums softly, not a tune, but the rhythm of years. Dot around her are baskets of every shape and purpose, round for apples, tall for kindling, oval for herbs, flat for cheesecloths. Each one seems to tell a story without words. Elspeth steps forward, and is greeted not with words, but a nod, and the offering of a thin bundle of damp willow rods. "Try," the old woman says. There's no explanation, just the invitation of quiet. "Work." So Elspeth kneels and begins. Her fingers fumble, and the reeds bend stubbornly, but the woman says nothing. Only the sound of birds in the hedge, wind through grasses, and the rustle of the willow fills the space between them. After some time, Elspeth looks down at what she's made. Crooked, uneven, simple but hers. The old woman inspects it, nods once, and gestures to a tiny lidded basket by her side. She opens it, and from within lifts a handful of tiny charms-carved wood in the shape of eggs, moons, stars, and even a tiny curled fox. "These," the woman says, "are for dreams." Elspeth tilts her head. The basket weaver continues. "Place one under your pillow when your heart is too loud." They hush it, not with magic, but memory. She chooses a tiny star and tucks it into Elspeth's palm, a gift for quiet effort. Elspeth feels something deeper than gratitude or recognition, as though the old woman has seen a part of her that words would never reach. Before she rises, she asks, "Do you always work in silence?" The woman finally smiles. "No," she says softly, "only when the world forgets how to listen." Elspeth bows her head in understanding and leaves, the little charm resting in her hand like a note written in the old language of stillness. Behind her, the basket weaver returns to her weaving, humming once more low and slow, like wind curling through forest roots. The final stretch of the market is quieter now. Twilight has given way to early night, and only the warm pools of lantern light mark the stalls that remain. Elspeth's steps slow, drawn by a flickering glow knot from candles, but from something subtler, something ancient. A small man with a crooked back sits at a stall cluttered with lanterns of every kind, glass spheres, paper cages, metal frames. They don't just hold fire, they glow with shifting colors, like memories caught inside. He smiles at Elspeth, tapping the wooden bench beside him. "You've walked the day, haven't you?" "I have," she replies, settling beside him. He holds out a small lantern. "These aren't for light." "Not really. They're for stories." Elspeth blinks. "Stories?" He gestures to a glass one with a faint gold shimmer. Each one carries a tale. You light it. You listen not with ears, but with the hush inside. "Your chest." She takes the lantern and peers inside. For a moment, she sees a ship on stormy waters, a child holding a shell, and a dog curled beside a hearth. The images pass like dreams behind foggy glass. "Do you make them?" she asks. The man chuckles. No, I just catch them. They drift into the world when someone forgets a story, or when a tale is whispered for the very last time. They don't like to vanish, so they come to me. He lifts one shaped like a teardrop. Inside is a soft purple hue that seems to sigh. This one, he says. It's about a widow who learned to laugh again because of a goose. Elspeth laughs softly. That sounds like a good story. It is, he says, then looks at her. Kindly, would you like to leave a story behind? She tilts her head. How? He hands her a tiny blank lantern, just a hollow shell. You carry it home, he says. You whisper your story to it in the dark, then hang it near your bed. If it glows by morning, it has remembered. Elspeth holds the lantern gently, as though it might fly away. Does it always work? The man leans back. Only if the story is real. Not in the facts, but in the feeling. She nods, understanding without fully knowing why. The wind picks up, and the lanterns chime softly against one another like wind bells of memory. As Elspeth rises to go, the man calls out, and remember, no story is too small to be kept. She smiles, tucks the lantern into her basket beside herbs, cheeses, and ribbon, and walks slowly toward the edge of the market. In the hush between footsteps, she wonders which story she'll whisper when she gets home. The bustle has quieted to a hush, and Elspeth walks a winding path beneath the low-hanging boughs of ancient trees. The evening air is cool and scented with crushed thyme and sweet wood smoke, the kind that clings gently to wool and lingers in dreams. Her basket is heavier than when she began the day, not just with goods, but with memory, a silken ribbon, a round of cheese, a wooden spoon carved with ivy, and the small, empty lantern tucked carefully beneath a folded kerchief. Each item holds a fragment of her walk. Each one a moment she will carry quietly for weeks. She steps over the mossy stone bridge that arches above the sleepy stream. The moon, pale and round, mirrors her reflection in the water, and for a moment Elspeth sees herself nod as she was at dawn, but softened now. Like a page turned many times, her cottage appears as a silhouette beyond the trees. Smoke curls from the chimney in gentle ribbons. Inside, her dog will be dozing by the hearth. The shutters will creak slightly in the wind. She doesn't hurry. Every sound feels more vivid in the quiet, the rustle of a hedgehog, the hoot of an owl, the delicate crunch of her steps on the path. It is the hour between waking and dreaming, where the world forgets to keep time. She reaches her door and pauses. Instead of stepping inside, she sets her basket down gently and lifts the tiny glass lantern from beneath the cloth. It is cool in her hand and still dim. Elspeth walks to the garden bench just outside her window. The night sky opens above her like a vast velvet dome pricked with stars. She holds the lantern in both hands and whispers, not a tale of adventure or sorrow, but something small and hers alone. A memory of her mother's voice humming while kneading dough. A flash of herself, years ago, running barefoot across dew-soaked grass. The way the market smelled of lavender and sheep's wool and warm bread. She closes her eyes. The lantern warms slightly. A faint honey-colored glow begins to pulse within. It's not bright, but it's enough. She smiles, not wide, just the kind of smile that settles into your chest and stays. She carries the lantern inside, places it on the sill beside her bed, and draws the quilt up around her shoulders. The dog sighs. The fire crackles once. And as the world shifts gently into slumber, the softest golden glow pulses in the dark, holding her story like a secret it promises never to lose.